Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of May Madness is here. Or maybe it's already passed? Last month I watched a variety of new movies, so let's cut to the chase and get right to it. Starting with yet another installment in the somewhat exciting world of the MCU. But this time, things are a bit different, as the movie is directed by none other than Sam Raimi, who also happens to be one of my favorite directors. Initially, upon hearing that Raimi was directing a Doctor Strange horror movie, I was pretty doubtful, assuming that the movie would be A, unrecognizable from the directing style of other MCU movies, and B, not actually a horror movie. And I have never been so glad to be proven wrong. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is very much a Sam Raimi movie. His style is evident throughout the film, but less in that Spider-Man way like I expected, and more in an Evil Dead way. I'm cool with that. I absolutely love the Evil Dead films. What you're getting with this movie is some of the best directing in the MCU, meets one of the worst scripts. There are a lot of plot holes and things that just don't make a lot of sense in this movie. The simplest way I can describe it is messy. If you're expecting this movie to fully delve into the concept of multiverses, it really doesn't. I would say anything to do with the multiverse was the most disappointing aspect of the film, especially because the universes they do travel to just aren't that interesting. The title is very misleading. I mean, the multiverse is the least mad part about it. Fortunately, this movie, while not exactly scary, is a total spook fest consisting of demons, zombies, witches, cursed books, and spooky mansions. Not to mention the film is surprisingly gory. Not like Evil Dead gory, I mean, what is? But there's a point early on in this film with Scarlet Witch that just completely caught me off guard and made me think, oh, we're doing that? Alright, I'm on board with this. Despite its many flaws, the film is some of the most fun I've had watching a Marvel movie. The action scenes are usually my least favorite part of anything MCU, but they are a blast here. It really just goes to show that letting a director direct can do wonders for your film. Unfortunately, this movie also happens to be a strong argument against allowing auteurs creative freedom in the MCU, as it may not be the best approach to a franchise that up till now had played everything so safe. This in many ways felt to me more like a DCEU film, which is both a positive and a negative. My emotions are very mixed with this one. It's like the MCU finally made a movie specifically for me, but that doesn't make it automatically good. I'd compare it to something like Van Helsing, where I know it's kinda bad, but I still love it. My critic brain would give this a meh, but my overly excited child brain gives this thing a thumbs up. I don't know if the MCU can afford to do it, but I hope they continue hiring more ambitious directors and just allowing them to do their thing. Because at this point, I just don't really care if it all falls apart. I just want to have a fun time watching their movies again. The next movie I watched was unfortunately not Top Gun Maverick. Instead, I watched the new Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie on Disney+, which is easily the single most bizarre film I've seen in 2022. This movie is less of a Chip and Dale movie and more of a Roger Rabbit movie in the same vein of stuff like Looney Tunes Back in Action. The movie is a collaboration between Disney and The Lonely Island, with Akiva Schaffer directing and Andy Samberg starring as Dale. The concept alone sounded completely nuts, and I think that's the best way to describe this film, completely nuts. Which is fitting seeing as they're chipmunks and all, haha. Initially, upon seeing the trailer for this, I thought I was gonna hate it, but fortunately the movie is far too entertaining for me to completely dismiss it. 90% of the humor is just references, but I laughed at a lot more jokes than I thought I would. It's insane the amount of pre-existing cartoon characters they are able to fit into this movie. I like how the movie takes full advantage of the fact that CG is a big part of animation now, whether it's through jokes poking fun at it, or just characters of different animation styles walking around. The fact that there's a claymation character and a Muppet in this movie is hilarious just because it feels so out there. I've never seen a movie willing to throw so many clashing styles into one. It's just sheer nonsense. And there are some aspects about the way it was animated that I wasn't a fan of. The cel-shaded CG look instead of using traditional animation for the Chip and Dale cast was a poor choice for sure. And every time a cartoon character wears clothes in this movie, you can just tell that they rotoscoped a cartoon head and hands over a person, and it looks awful. But I didn't really go into this film expecting anything as expertly crafted as Roger Rabbit, or even Back in Action for that matter. So I think if you just lower your expectations, like really lower them, you'll be fine. It should be noted that I've never actually watched the original show, so I don't have much of a say on whether or not they did anything to butcher its reputation. I'm going to assume that they did, and that's why so many people hate this movie. But I personally have nothing to get upset about. Despite its PG rating, this is definitely a movie made more with adults in mind than kids, and I can respect that. It makes it a bit more confusing as to how this movie exists to begin with, but it's on streaming, so someone will watch it. I keep seeing people on the internet call this film ugly and cynical, and I have to mostly disagree. I mean, visually it's kind of ugly, and I would be lying if I didn't say that there was nothing cynical about it. Chaotic is the word that I would use, and while it's no masterpiece or even close to it, I found it to be pretty fun and funny, and sometimes that's really all a comedy has to be. This is a lot like with Doctor Strange, where my critic brain would give it a meh, but I suppose I did have fun watching it. You know what? I'll just give it a thumbs up just to piss off annoying animation fans. And the last movie I watched in May was the long-awaited Bob's Burgers movie. It's a miracle this movie even happened. I thought for sure after the Fox and Disney merger it would be left dead in the water. I can't really call myself a big Bob's Burgers fan in the sense that I have only watched the first season and a few episodes from later seasons. But what little I have seen of the show, I really enjoyed. I love that the show isn't cynical like the majority of other adult cartoons. It's just a breath of fresh air, really. I went into this movie expecting a film that felt like an extended episode, and that's exactly what I got. That really seems to be the case with most of these 2D theatrical movies based on popular cartoons, the exception maybe being the Rugrats movies where they would actually go on a big exciting adventure. I had a lot of fun with this one. The animation was really nice and fluent, which Bob's Burgers would occasionally do with the show, but it was nice to see an entire movie that looked that way. My biggest complaint with this movie revolves around some weird pacing halfway through, and the fact that the movie is a musical with only like 3 songs in it. Granted, the singing isn't great, but at the same time I felt there should have been more songs. The gaps between musical numbers are just way too long. It wasn't laugh out loud funny, but I still had a lot of fun watching this, and there were things that made me chuckle. I don't think it's anything I'll remember long after, but anyone who is a fan of Bob's Burgers is bound to enjoy it. I also imagine those are the only types of people who would be seeing this movie. Maybe I'm wrong. So in that case, I'll give this a thumbs up. Nothing amazing, but a fun escape from reality nonetheless. So that's it for May's movies. I'll see you all again next month. Goodbye.